some of the things that kind of popped into mind when I was thinking about this, Ellie basically single-handedly planned, mapped out, and built our irrigation system pretty early on in 2015, transitioned our youth program from one of kind of a summer farm experience into a really deep strategic youth leadership program, really rooted in developing young leaders of social change, and pitched and pushed for GVI to change our mission from kind of being environmental focused into food justice, and also to adopt commitments to anti-racism and youth mentorship. And all of that was within the first 2 years of Ellie being on the GVI team. And so throughout that whole experience in the past 5 years together, I have learned so much through working closely with Ellie. So I am so excited to see what happens within the next 2 years of GVI, the direction that Ellie takes the organization, and for years, after that. And what we know is that a key component of that will be working with our amazing partners, some of whom are on the phone right now. And this event, this get together, well, I would love to be in person, but I'm glad you're all here in Zoom. This get together is co-hosted by Fairfield University, our partner for the past 5 years. And Ellie will talk a little bit more about our partnership, but I just wanted to welcome and thank Fairfield University for being here and for co-hosting. And again, I just can't wait to see kind of what develops over the next few years as you guys can continue to work together. We've got special guest Senator Marilyn Moore on the call as well. And so Ellie and Senator Moore will be able to chat about food justice while we're here. And we've got a few GVIers on the call as well. We have Alex, who recently joined our team as operations assistant, and Brianna, who joined just this week or last week as director of operations. So a few new GVI faces as well. So thanks everybody for joining, and let's all settle in and hear from GVI's executive director.
Thanks, Christina. You always make me feel great. Thank you. We're gonna miss you so sorely, but I'll talk about that a little bit more later. I wanted to first review our agenda a little bit together very quickly, and then have Fairfield U explain a little bit more about the work that they do, and have as co-hosts their presentation about their work with us. So today we're kicking it off after I speak with Fairfield U welcoming us and explaining about that partnership from 12:30 to 1. I will be asking Senator Marilyn Moore for a little bit of her insight about some questions surrounding food justice and the world that we're living in right now within a global pandemic and a world that really needs to center Black voices and Black lives. From 1 to 1:20, I'll give you a little bit of a perspective and a sneak peek into my future vision with space for a Q&A. And then from 1:20 to 1:30, Fairfield U will be presenting the Center for Social Impact's Outstanding Community Partner Award. And 1:30 to 1:45 is truly the most exciting piece of interactive cookbook work that's ever been created, in my humble opinion. It'll be Fairfield U unveiling the community garden cookbook that they've actually created with voices, recipes, insight, and storytelling from community gardeners right within our network here in Bridgeport. And so with the agenda behind us, I want to say thank you so much to Melissa, Joel, Scott, Dina, Andrea, Lucario, Julia, and Pablo, who have been an incredible, incredible team at Fairfield U, and Jonathan Delgado for being on our board and forever helping on both sides through the program piece and also through GVI, helping us to shape our understanding of where we're going, what we're doing, and how to always be better partners in this work. We've been partnering together since 2016, and Fairfield U has been here for the hot days of data collection in the gardens, and also the very slow days of trying to get a community gardener to call you back. They've been at the computers writing incredible empirical work and collecting stories so that we can move some of this work that we're seeing in the community gardens into potential policy, but also share it more widely. And so I'm so grateful for that. And we're going to be sharing all of these links in a thank you email to you after the presentation. I do want to shout out that the presentation and today's Zoom call is being recorded. So if that is at all uncomfortable for you, we ask that you just head off camera or shoot us a chat. You can chat myself or Alex, who's here as Alexander, privately with questions. And with that, I'll move it over to Fairfield U. Thank you so much today for all of your help and for everything that you've done with us over the past 4 years. We can't wait to see the cookbook with everyone else.
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you for Cristina and for the opportunity to be here with you today, and of course for your partnership. I'll share a little bit more about the Center for Social Impact and the background of our work. I just want to give the members of our team a quick opportunity just to kind of introduce themselves, their names, so you can kind of pick them out on the screen here. I'll walk us through it. Jonathan, if you could go first.
Hi, Jonathan checking in.
Joel.
Hi, yeah, I'm Joel, and I'm presenting the cookbook today. So,
Great. Julia.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm a recent graduate of Fairfield University.
Okay, thank you. Dina.
Hi everyone.
Dina's a faculty member. I'll talk about her. Andrea.
Hi everyone, Andrea Canwell. I work in the Center for Social Impact with Melissa and Jonathan.
All right, thank you. I think that's all I see from our team on the screen here. I'm gonna share my screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
All right, great, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to give you just a quick background. As Cristina and Ellie said, we've been partnering for about 5 years now. You know, Fairfield University as a whole has a number of different ways that we work with GVI, everything from kind of helping with garden cleanups. But through our office, the Center for Social Impact at Fairfield, we've been partnering on a pretty continuous, sustained basis for a little over 5 years through a research-based partnership. The Center for Social Impact, for those of you that might not be aware, our role within the university is to kind of activate the university's mission around service and social justice through the academic work of the institution. So we do this through coursework where we pair courses and students are applying what they're learning in the course to work with nonprofits and community agencies. And we also do this through research. And that might happen through courses, and sometimes it happens through independent teams of researchers who are working with community organizations around questions that they have. And what we've been working with GVI on is questions around how to understand the impact of community gardens on the individuals that work in those gardens, as well as the communities that surround them. And so we came up with this clever name a couple of years ago, CARROT. Community Agriculture Research, Raising Opportunity Together. So just a little bit of background. Again, we started this in 2016 through Dr. Dina Franceschi's environmental economics course. And really at that time, it was just kind of getting a sense of, you know, what can we know? What would be some meaningful measures to look at to understand the impact of community gardens? And then we had a little bit of a break in there, and we picked it up again in 2018 with a more structured, ongoing study that really has been going on for about 2 steady years now, where we did some data collection looking at the direct and indirect impacts of the gardens. We began to engage the community gardeners themselves as co-researchers, where they were collecting data on an ongoing basis and looking at it with us. And then for the past 2 years, we've ended the kind of season with a celebration with the community gardeners that participated. And that's always been a really meaningful experience, where we kind of look back at what we did together and also hear from the community gardeners what it means to them to be involved in the gardens, but then also to be a part of the research too. This past year, we integrated more the voices of the gardeners themselves through a series of interviews. And these interviews informed the research that we've done, but also play a big role in the recipe book, the cookbook that you'll see later in the presentation, which is a digital cookbook. Just a kind of a snapshot of some of the things that we've looked at through the research. And again, this really is just a snapshot, looking at a portion of the growing season with a number of gardeners and kind of taking into account some learning curve that is involved. And I would invite any of my colleagues on the call to kind of jump in, because I definitely should be citing all of them. This is the work of Dr. Franceschi, and certainly the work of Julia, who in her senior year did a capstone project on the community garden research. But we looked at labor.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I think you mean to be advancing your slides, but I'm only seeing slide 1. So I think if you just
You're
click
not
down
seeing them,
to,
huh?
yeah,
Okay.
if you just click down to slide 2 or 3, we'll be able to see.
Yeah, I don't know why it's advancing on my side.
Okay. We're seeing your like the PowerPoint not in slide view, just in sort of the regular view. So maybe if you go back to the regular view and just click through without putting it into presentation mode.
Okay.
Or maybe, yeah. There you go. Now we got it. That's it.
Okay. I don't know what I did. I just picked a button,
Nice
kind
job.
of like hitting the side of the TV screen, and it worked. So we're gonna stick
Cool.
with it. Okay. So we looked at labor, for example, and you know, could you put a number on that? So over 12 weeks, the eight community gardeners that participated regularly recorded over 125 hours of labor that they put into the gardens. We looked at what the gardens are producing. And so this snapshot here is of the 4 most popular crops that were grown by the community gardeners, which produced over 100 pounds of produce. And then looking at, you know, the cost of that produce in the local grocery stores, putting a figure on that. So what does that mean for the, you know, how it, the impact for the individual gardeners themselves in terms of what they can produce as opposed to buying in the grocery store, and certainly the community as a whole. And then finally, looking at some issues around community health. And this involved looking at the literature more broadly on urban agriculture and then applying it locally to what we were seeing. And you know, the fact that community gardeners are more physically active than the average person. And you can also, they presume that they eat more healthy because they are producing vegetables for their own homes and for their own consumption. And so you can then kind of predict how that impacts the health outcomes for the individuals and the community as a whole. And then property value. I think this was a really interesting one where we looked at home values. Whoops, sorry. Now I don't know how to go back. There we go. Home values during what is known as the Great Recession. Where home values dropped, or in Bridgeport and certainly all over the nation. But homes that were within a buffer zone where 2 GVI gardens were located lost less value by a significant percentage. And we also looked at this, you know, where a home was within the proximity of 2 gardens in general, but it was specifically GVI gardens where we saw this difference. And so you can assume then, you know, how GVI's presence impacts the value of homes, the community itself, and the value of the community. And then through our conversations, our interviews with the gardeners themselves, you hear the stories of how it impacts them. You know, many of the gardeners are immigrants, and so this is an opportunity for them to connect with their culture. They might not be able to find the vegetables that are important within their food culture in the grocery stores, but they can grow them in the gardens. We heard stories where it really brought families together and help to heal some tensions that had existed within families, and also help them to connect with the community. Again, when you're immigrating from another country, being able to having these opportunities to build connections within the community. We were hearing those stories about how the GVI gardens helped to facilitate that. And so I'm going to pause here. We're going to pick up later, as Ellie said, with the recipe book, which is kind of where we are currently with our research. But just want to emphasize that what we value so much about this is the ongoing partnership that we have here. There's no, I guess there's a beginning, but there's no necessary end. We're always coming up with new questions to explore. And it's so important for us and for the education that we're trying to provide our students, for them to have this experience, particularly with the values that GVI holds and that comes through in their work. These are the values that we want our students to develop and to have some exposure to as we send them off into the world to be change agents and to be promoters of equity and social justice. And so it really is a mutual partnership, and we're so grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was awesome. And thank you so much to the Fairfield U team. Looking forward to hearing more about that. And now we're going to pass it off to Ellie and Senator Moore.
Hello, Senator Moore. Thank you so much for joining us today. You look wonderful. How are you doing?
Well, Ellie, every time I see you, you're usually filled with dirt. So you've been in the ground. I'm not used to seeing you look like that. So I wasn't sure it was you. You look wonderful.
I'm almost unrecognizable outside of my overalls, I've been told. So I guess I'll take it as a compliment, but hopefully you'll see me in overalls again soon. Thank you so much for joining us, Senator Moore. And for everyone on the call, Senator Moore is a fierce leader in our work in Connecticut. Her work as of late, some of the highlights that I've been able to see is her work to further police accountability, championing for Black lives, and marching with folks here in Bridgeport to make that known and possible. She stood up to absentee ballot fraud work that's happened in our city. She's a fierce proponent for healthcare, especially women's health, through her own nonprofit, the Witness Project, and she's been leading food justice work in Connecticut and especially in Bridgeport for the entirety of her career. And we have Marilyn Moore to thank for so many of the great changes that have occurred across our state, but especially in my life as a young leader, and especially as a woman who's coming into a leadership role. I have to thank you personally for all of the time and energy that you've invested in me, Senator Moore, and connecting the work that I do as a dirty farmer back to food justice and back to the meaning of this work, and helping me to connect those dots when it seemed like the only thing I could connect was putting a tomato into a crate and getting it sold, helping me see that the circle was so much bigger. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for what you've made possible for me.
Thank you. You know, this has been when I think back, I had a tax sale this weekend. I cleaned out my garage and I found a box of papers where I started this because I was founder of a breast cancer program and for women and Black women who disproportionately died from breast cancer compared to white women due to late stage diagnosis. But on the journey, I found out even when they were diagnosed at the same time, if they didn't have access to healthy food or didn't even understand nutrition compared to in comparison to why they would have better survival rates if they could access it. Took me on this journey of food, and it's just been really amazing how much I've learned about nutrition and food, but also to the point of having access to it and growing it. And I started with the food policy in Bridgeport is really where I started getting that established, and then joining the Connecticut Food System Alliance, and then Food Solutions New England. So I've been on this journey of food that I would have never guessed that I would learn so much, and met so many wonderful people, from growers to workers to producers, aggregators. So I've watched the whole cycle of this happen and understand that the impact it has on people's health and their overall lives and the salaries that they make. There's huge impact in the food justice industry when you look at who's growing the food, how they're being compensated for it, and what it means to have gardens in your own community to address immediate needs. So I appreciate you all. You know, I love GBI. Love you all. Love you, love you, love you.
We're so grateful for your love, and it's right back at you. And thank you for always helping us to see how foundational food is in all of your policy work. Today we wanted to ask you 5 questions from your bird's eye view or personally. And so to kick us off, I would love to ask you if you could, in your own words, because we all have a different definition, if you could define what food justice means to you and why it is important for you to see it here in Bridgeport.
For me, it's having the ability to be able not only to access the food, but the ability to have a place to grow it. When I say food, I just don't mean vegetables. I mean to be able to have chickens in your backyard that produce eggs and can feed your family. I think my biggest problem is the zoning that we've created that really is a barrier for people to have access to whatever it is they need. And, you know, I learned this along the way. I'm in a lot of white spaces, and what I learned to eat in my early days is really quite different than other people. And when we see so many different cultures come into a community, we can't assume that just because spinach is important to you, that spinach is important to me. It might be some other type of green. So I think food justice is not just about growing it, but everybody having access to grow whatever it is they want to grow, or even if they can't grow it, be able to get access to it at an affordable price. And I'm talking about quality, really quality vegetables and fruits, having access to that. And I can never not include the people who sell, grow and sell, that they are making a decent salary or for the things that they sell, that people appreciate what it takes to grow food, and that they're willing to pay for that. And I see that as that whole cycle of justice for everyone, not just for people growing it, not just for people eating it, but the whole system has to be a just system. It's not what I see right now. It's important in Bridgeport because I think about what happened during COVID-19, that we didn't really have a real tight system in place of how are we going to get food to our kids? How are we going to get food to our adults who are living in senior and congregate care? How are we going to take care of them? And so for Bridgeport, there's so many people who are low income, who didn't have access, that I panicked. I just literally panicked. How are we going to do that? And I would love to be able to see in Bridgeport us come together to bring all these different organizations together to have a greater plan on how we're going to be able to feed our community.
You and I both, thank you for naming the interconnectedness of justice in food work. That's so important to lift up, and how choice is a really big part of that. To connect it back to the point you made, and how COVID and Black Lives Matter are actually deeply rooted and connected together when we're talking about health of our communities. When we say Black Lives Matter, how intricately tied it is to food justice and injustice in Bridgeport. How does that connect to your experience of food justice in Bridgeport?
Well, because we're probably making the lower income and we're dependent on subsidies, you know, when you think about Bridgeport and the makeup it's at least 80% Black and Puerto Rican, right? Or other ethnic groups, that low income, depended on a lot of jobs that didn't happen during COVID-19, didn't have access, not able to store food like other people were able to do, have, you know, not just paper products, but actually have more than what they need for any given day. All that has impact on people of color, on Blacks. And I think when we're not able to store food or have surplus, we're the ones in the store trying to find food when everybody else has already stored up their food. It's almost like a storm. You know, you go to the store and you see people who have access to money and food, and they go in the store and they're able to plan for the next 3 or 4 days. Low-income people don't often have that access to being able to buy food for the next week to prepare for it. So I think when I look at the Black Lives Matter and COVID-19, I've learned so much about how things really do work, even trying to get access to food for people and trying to get it delivered to them. There's all these other things that are going on where people don't want to go into certain neighborhoods to deliver food. They want you to come to them, and people don't want to leave their houses and don't have access to even be able to leave. And I think that's all those things end up being part of the problem of why our health disparities are what they are, because of that access, because of people thinking about how difficult it is for people to get to that food, and how difficult it is once they get it there. For some of our seniors, who's going to be able to help them? And what are we giving them in the way of food? Are we stuffing them with starches and things that are high calorie content and not nutrition? Makes a difference also.
Thank you. And as you say that, I'm thinking about all of the, especially the Black leaders in Bridgeport who did community work to make sure that we could nourish our communities, and thinking about Perry Bell in the Reservoir area and Deb Sims in the East, and about Vanessa Lyles and PT Partners in the Black Rock neighborhood, and how everyone was working in their own community doing this incredible work to meet the need in an emergency, but how if we can rebuild the system together, then
it was really from the heart. And people, those are the people who always reach out to the community to make sure what they have, but it wasn't really a coordinated where, as a community, as a whole Bridgeport community, what is our plan?
Yeah.
And how are we going to get food to everybody? And then, in my opinion, I see the same people doing that work all the time, being a drain. You can't keep going back to the same people all the time, but there has to be a more coordinated program of how we work together to make sure that everybody has access to quality food during the pandemic. And I just got off a call talking about the next, we think there's going to be a next surge in November, December, even with the flu. How are we going to work to make sure people have access to that? And here we are at the end of August, and we're talking about something that could happen in 2 months, and there's still not a bigger plan on how we're going to address that for people who may not have access to food again.
yeah. And to think about food justice, it is so much about like uprooting the barriers that keep us unconnected in the first place. So it's both. It's having something to meet our need in the next 2 months, and also thinking about in the next 20 years how the whole system will look different. And I guess along those lines, what are areas of food justice that you personally wish you knew more about?
I think how it all works together, to see the whole system working together in a coordinated way. Even if you just think about Bridgeport connecting to New Haven, connecting to other places. You know, I've been doing this with this Food Solutions New England, looking at sustainability of food in the New England states over the next, but it was trying to do 40% of our food grown by the year 2050. And I just watch it, and we're nowhere near, because we started to identify so many problems within the system. You know, we had this idea where we'd like to get to, but then along the way, all these other things are happening, and you're looking at systems that are not connected, and you're looking at people who have been left out of the system or not considered. When I first joined Food Solutions New England, my biggest complaint was, why am I in a white space and there's no people of color talking about what they may need? Those conversations need to be expanded to talk about the needs of everyone, and not just, I look at the faces here. This is a very white space too. And I look at this, right? We have to, I mean, people say, well, I don't know anybody, and that I did this and I did that. We have to make a more concerted effort, intentional, to bring everybody into the food system to talk about this food justice. And, you know, as you expose like your community gardens, more people are getting involved in growing their food. We've got to expand that to people really understanding what it means. You know, I fight very hard for GBI and that space up there, to make sure that you all have that space, because people don't really understand what that means. The report from the university about the social emotional piece of it, people coming together, the healing that can take place in the garden. You know, if I go out in my yard to pull weeds, I've been out there 5 or 6 hours and I don't even realize it, but I feel so good inside, like everything else is left. I think we have to expose more people to not just about the growing the food, but what it means to be out in the dirt and working with it, and what it can do for building communities and bringing people together. I hope I answered your question. I just think of so many things that I've learned, but all the things that I don't know and I haven't seen happen. When I think about a food policy council in Bridgeport, how long has it taken them to get to a food plan, right? It has to come from the heart of the city that we want it and we're pushing for it. And I don't think I've seen that happen here in Bridgeport. I'm still seeing it very fragmented. So I would love to see us be able to come together and say, this is our food plan, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to tap into other places like New Haven, where I've been watching. I know you're doing a cookbook. Engel did a cookbook, and that was my first introduction to people really doing cooking and then putting it into a book that the community could see how it works together.
Thank you. And I appreciate you actually flipping the question to name the inequities, so that it's not just about what you want to learn, but what you want to see everyone else understand and see before they try to jump in and forge solutions without, like, as you said, the heart of Bridgeport or the heart of any of our cities being named the center of the work that we want to change and where we want to go. And to that point, our next question, which maybe you did answer by talking about a food plan that you'd like to see and the not only inclusivity, but like equity and unbreaking of these white spaces, or the breaking of these white spaces. You might have named those as some of your things that you'd like to see, but what are some others that you might want to see if you could wave a magic wand and transport yourself to a future Bridgeport food landscape? What are some of the things that you'd experience or see in that new food landscape after you'd finished waving the wand?
So I ran for mayor last year, and I wanted to create a food hub. I had Bill Finch almost to that point of, yes, I'm going to do it, and he didn't get reelected, right? I think a food hub here in Bridgeport would be the answer. It would create jobs. People could understand food and the production of food and how it works all together. We're on the water. There's so many opportunities here. I think, but in my heart of heart, if I could do anything, it would be to get a food hub here in Bridgeport and get people involved, create the jobs that we need to have here in Bridgeport also, but it would lift Bridgeport up as having something that we could look to for the next 20 or 30 years and where do we want to be. I watched to see what they did in Waterbury with their food, and I think it's something that we could do here. I think there's enough people interested. I think there's opportunity in the way of space that if I could twinkle my eyes in 5 years, we would be a food hub.
Senator Moore, Dr. Dan Williams, right across the street from the farm as we speak. But can you explain what you mean by food hub? Can you describe that a little bit for me?
That's a place, well, the way I am seeing it, I'm seeing it a place where food could come in from other places. Local farmers could bring their food. They could sell it to other places, more than a farmer's market, and not just vegetables, but fish, other things that we grow to bring in to the community, create jobs, and have it like a center, almost like a hub where places would come and pick up local, but also larger people who do aggregation could bring it and deliver it here and sell it to other places. So it could create jobs in the way of, you know, if you had all these community gardens that could produce enough vegetables, they could bring it to one place and sell it, right? If we could get fisheries to come in and bring in the fish, fresh fish, which is really important to health, to bring that into, right? Even when you think about dairy, we've got Wade's Dairy here in Bridgeport, a place where we could bring this all together, create jobs, larger than a farmer's market, but also a place where you could actually create plans on how to grow food. People could learn how to sell, how to do finance, how to run business, that it would be from the ground up. So you're not just doing, I don't mean not just, but you're not just growing food for your family, but you could grow for a larger group of people and have an opportunity to sell it.
Senator Moore, that Mongers Market pops into my head. Have any of you been into the Mongers Market? It's like this place where all those, it's just a huge warehouse building with all these antiques and stuff, just like, and a bunch of vendors. I just, that's what.
Is that the one in Black Rock?
It's on the west end, but sort of along the highway, just below the highway. And I just see that's what my vision, when you say that, that would be awesome to have farmers and fishermen and at a place to come. That would be fantastic.
So through my work with Food Solutions New England, I've talked to people who are fishermen and fisherwomen who have said there are so many fish that we have access to that are not popular, that people don't know about, but other people who fish do, that we could be selling here locally to give people access to different types of fish that are very healthy, that are low cost also because they're not as popular, right? There's so many opportunities. I mean, when you think about people who are really growing apples and they're dropping on the ground and they're not doing anything with them, we could be bringing them to a place, right? Restaurants could pick out, could give us, could buy produce from us, you know, if you could get it to a place where people are growing and bringing in their wares. I mean, and I don't mean just Bridgeport, I mean from all the surrounding areas that we could do that.
Is there, where is the closest one? That's a fabulous idea, quite honestly, but where, do we know, is there anything like that anywhere in the southern part of the state?
There's one in Waterbury.
Waterbury.
They started it about 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's up and running.
Great idea.
There's a few good models across the country too. Yeah,
there's amazing models. And what's cool is that it addresses that point that you talked about, about having people of colors, voices, Black farmers, Black fisher people, or folks who want to own their own food businesses as a part of the market, because you're doing it communally. It's not, I have to farm, I have to harvest, I have to wash, I have to get it to market. And if it rains, it's over and I lost everything, which happens to my friends who are farmers all the time. A food hub could be something where we're all buttressing each other and creating a stronger food system by just sharing space and sharing like marketing and even sharing values together. Like we get stronger through storytelling. And so I think that a food hub is like multiple purposes. So I'm gonna see like if I can, you know, do some magic to come up with that wand for you, because I want to be in that future with you. And I know Dina and Dr. Dan and probably several other people on the call do too. So let's make it.
I smell fundraiser.
Thanks, Jim. And so that brings us to our final question for you. Thank you so much for joining us, Senator Moore. And we'd like to know, because you've had this, you've always spoken truth to us and you've never minced words, and that's actually what's helped with my leadership and with GVI's path forward. You've helped us steer the course to change and grow and be really comfortable with evolving since my first season farming up on Reservoir Farm, when you came and you taped an episode of Moments with Marilyn with me as like a upstart 23-year-old who like had never been on TV. And we'd like to ask, what is an impact GVI has had that is unique to our work and has brought you pride to partner with us and be a part of our family?
I just think that you all are really wonderful, but I look at the amount of people who have come in to do community gardens in an organized way to learn about growing. Even me, you know, I had this year where I threw out the pumpkins. That was my real conversation. I threw out my leftover pumpkins in the backyard for the birds. And the next year I had 15 oversized pumpkins, and we were trying to figure out what the vine was. Somebody said, oh, I think it's squash. Oh, I think it's this. And then in September, I had 15 pumpkins that are unbelievable. That experience for me made me pay attention to how things grow. Even I've got these little yellow birds right now that are coming in the front yard, and I'm like saying, why are they here? That awareness of everything else that's going on around the birds, the growing, the seeds, all that has been such an eye-opener, which I think helps you develop yourself also. And for that, I'm so grateful, because I really am a city girl from here, concrete, you know, not growing anything. Just the exposure that you all have brought to so many people and an opportunity to grow vegetables. And even, I know there was someone doing bees up there. That for me was eye-opening also. I had never really seen that happen before. So I think what you brought to our community and bringing people together and helping them understand how they grow, teaching our children from the ground up how to do this work, I think is so important to get them involved because that's the only way we're going to change the mindsets of this another generation who didn't appreciate the garden, but these children do. So I thank you for involving the children, teaching them leadership, but also what you've taught me as an adult, what I was able to learn at this point in my life. I appreciate that also. I could not have done it without GBI.
And we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. Honestly, the words can't actually.
I tell you all this all the time, but just being here with you all and watch what you've been able to do and the number of people who've been involved and the positive stories that I've heard from so many people about being able to do the gardens. I really do appreciate the work that you've done here in Bridgeport. And I don't think it would have evolved without you. I just don't think it would have happened. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moore. We hope we can keep making you proud over the many years to come, even as your personal food hub takes off and you're going to be a very busy food hub operator. I would love.
Get there.
Thank you, Senator Moore.
Thank you so much, Senator Moore. And with all of that inspiration and excitement, I would love to speak a little bit about our future vision and leave some space for Q&A as well, because I think what's a really important component of leadership is leaving space for folks to ask questions. I've learned a lot over these past 5 years with GBI by having folks question or push back or sometimes just straight doubt some of the visions and ideas and directions we've gone in. And some of that has been for the better so that we could shift and change. And some of that has been for the better because it helped us dig into our values and what really matters to us. And so I think that that's, to me, an important piece as I greet you all for the first time, for many of you, as Executive Director of GBI. I'm one of my greatest values that I personally incorporate and care about is storytelling, and this feels like a very new chapter to be turning the page to. And I want to, for those of you who maybe don't know me as personally, I've been with GBI for 5.5 years beside an incredible team. And I started off by working in 10 of our 23 school gardens. We have 23 school gardens at 23 public schools in Bridgeport. And I started as a part-time contractor, helping to go into classrooms and understand the very, very real challenges that teachers had between bridging classroom learning and outdoor garden education. And my role quickly transitioned into becoming the farm manager, and I managed Reservoir Community Farm up until this last growing season ended in 2019. And during that time, I was able to have those hard conversations that we're talking about right now. Doubts, excitement, and dreams all coming together into one place to really catalyze change that I'll talk a little bit more about later. While managing the farm program, I was really lucky to co-lead our youth summers of 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, when we've had the awesome experience of shifting and really growing a youth program that more and more has been able to incorporate youth voice with a vision of being able to do that ever more and being able to be more adept at shifting and changing based on the youth that come into our program and what their needs are, because I always say youth are a thermostat for truth and a weather vane for change. And that's never more true of a teenager who will just walk up to you and tell you what it is like it is, which I really love and enjoy. And then over 2019 and 2020, I was able to head our community garden program and with our 12 beautiful sites and dig really deeply into some of the work that Fairfield U has done with us. I'm really excited for us to get to them presenting a little bit more about the cookbook after the Outstanding Community Partner Award when I'm finished speaking. So I've had my hands in the soil all over Bridgeport with hundreds and hundreds of incredible humans and thousands of not always so incredible pests that I've had to squish. And I've grown during that time as into a place where I could be more strategic. I was saying to you, Senator Moore, that it really takes a village to help someone connect the work that they do with their hands to this broader and bigger picture of the food system, and especially to food justice, which we all have a very different definition of based on our personal experience, but that for me comes down to choice. And I don't think I could have understood that and really come to that understanding without the leadership and mentorship of many women on this call, but especially Cristina Sandolo. Beside our board, Cristina has helped me to grow into this career where I've been able to connect the very real needs of systemic and institutional and interpersonal racism and see its connections to what Senator Moore was talking about, those extremely real outcomes that are rooted in poverty and educational outcomes for our students, mental and holistic wellness, especially for Black women, and the health outcomes that can be challenged and undone by getting our hands into the soil for each other. And all of that connectivity has come through a relationship with Cristina, where she's been able to, she's saying goodbye to us as someone that we all understand as an energizer, a visionary, a friend of Bridgeport. And while we're really sad to see you go, we can't wait to see what you cross-pollinate in the future as you move forward into new goals and new places. Cristina and visionary women like Senator Moore and the leaders at the Bridgeport Farmers Market Collaborative, the Food Policy Council, Five Frogs, and all of the partners who have been beside me through this, especially the folks who have had limited time and limited resources to dedicate to me, but still did. Each of them invested in me so that I'd be able to see how I fit into a future that is one that is based in restored community and mutual caring, which I think are two components that we often forget about in our day-to-day, that we're leveraging up sort of restored community and mutual caring that really bridges across the divides, and that we can transmit to others in really simple ways. So for me, that's through the work we do in our programs, but also through the partnerships we form, and through even just conversations that we have in like the late afternoon light as I'm going by a community garden and stopping to drop off flyers, and I get handed an armful of squash, and somebody walking by asks us about it, and then it jumpstarts a conversation about how they can get involved in the garden, involved in the food system. They tell us about how they cook squash in their country. Like, this is like a very real example of something that happens so quickly and is catalyzed through very simple moments, and it's through each of us digging our feet in and doing the work. So for those of you who have been on the journey with GBI for several years, I'm so grateful to you. And for those who are new friends and partners, welcome. Since 2017, we have changed our mission and we pivoted our intention with a good deal of trust in one another and in each of you to hold us accountable and understand the direction we're going in, to pivot to understand that the work that we did was never going to matter if it wasn't rooted in anti-racism. And this is work that we can't stop and don't want to stop when we leave the office of the farm. It's internal, it's unbuilding, it's uncomfortable, and it's also really beautiful. Last month, Penny and Pippa and Maggie and Jonathan, who are part of our board, we were able to have a board meeting where, well, I hope it's okay that I share this. I'll just say that for me, I ended the meeting with like, I was really emotional with like tears in my eyes because we'd unbuilt like some internalized whiteness that was keeping us separated from each other and forcing us to have board meetings that were very, very business related. And while that might not seem like completely connected to what you're seeing on TV with Black Lives Matter, I challenge you to think about that whiteness and white supremacy is a devaluation of Black life, but it's also a devaluation of all of our lives and how we should be. And it tells us that we need to stay separate and individualized from each other. And I'm seeing that unbuilt conversation by conversation within leadership at the board level, at the staff level, and even between gardeners, like as we're weeding cabbage together. So I think that that's like something that really invigorates me and makes me so excited to continue to move our work forward into the future. So we are, thank you, Marilyn, for pointing out how white the food system work is, not only nationally, but especially in Connecticut. And we are a food justice organization that through my personal self and body is going to continue to be white-led, but it is one that is committed to unlearning and deprioritizing not only my whiteness, but the unseen whiteness that is in all of us, in our learned experiences and the way we operate with each other. And we are challenging ourselves, and I'm especially challenging myself to see where it shows up, and centering Black and Indigenous and voices of color to lead us in the work, and really taking the privilege that I have in this position to kind of undercut those barriers that I know are in the way, so that those voices are not just voices that are that are having to take time, energy, and resources to build white women like me so that I can do this, but actually be in positions of power. My goal is to make sure that we don't have a food landscape that looks like the one that we're in now. It's not only going to have that dreamy food hub that we're talking about, but it's going to be filled with visionary leaders of color and Black leaders, so that my teens that are on the farm can see themselves implementing change, because they have so many role models to choose from and mentors to choose from. And so there are a lot of wins that we've had over the past 5 years of Cristina and I working together, big and small, but almighty. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the magic we'll be doing before I turn it over for a Q&A. First of all is that we've had 3 years of partnership with UConn for our urban farmer training program. And through that time, we have actually had farmers graduate that program, move into Barnum School and start growing food, including edible flowers and medicinal herbs, to then sell at the farmer's market at Reservoir. That farm is called Blissful Awakenings Farm. And I don't want them to be special or exceptional in any way in the future. I want to build incubation sites that really can cradle new and beginning urban farmers and build livelihoods, especially the livelihoods that I want to echo in Marilyn Moore's statement, those being livelihoods for Black communities that are living wage and full of respect for livelihood and respect for the work, but also that those farmers have respect for everyone along that food chain and vice versa. Our youth program this year is the first year that we've been able to get college credit for our youth, which has been so exciting through a partnership with Housatonic Community College. So we're able to not only pay them for all their farm and leadership work, but they're getting college credit, which is sometimes the quick spark that will get them ready to actually think about a college career if they hadn't already been thinking about that as part of their future. And I want to foster a youth program alongside Brianna that has a youth program centering their shifting needs and voices each year. So this year, obviously, that centered the global pandemic and our work in really having to root back into anti-racist work and what that looks like for a youth program during a pandemic. But in the future, that's also going to be climate change and the businesses that they want to grow. Again, and you can definitely quote me on this, and I don't need credit, but youth are thermostats of truth and weather vanes of social change. So always remember that when a teenager insults your hair, and also remember it when they tell you like what they see in their community and how that needs to change, not tomorrow, but right now, because that's really the job that we have to do at the end of the day. So this was also the first year that we had our community garden application translated into 5 of the major languages spoken in Bridgeport. In our public schools, we actually have 60 languages spoken because Bridgeport is amazing and the most diverse city in Connecticut. And with those 5 applications in different languages, we were able to create access and a new ability for gardeners and folks who'd been farmers all over the world to access these spaces that I'm so passionate about. And it's continued to foster this conversation in in our staff and in our community garden program about what are some other barriers we can remove, what are ways that we can siphon more people from just believing that because they don't have a yard they can't garden, into these spaces where we've been, I mean, you're going to hear more, but folks feel peace and excitement and safety and community. How do we get more folks in, and how do we actually convert more lots in our city to be these spaces that can then convert into, and as in the example before, businesses, so that people can grow livelihoods literally from the soil in Bridgeport. Our partners in Sacred Heart have helped us for years to create lesson plans for our teachers, and I want our school gardens to link learning and connectivity to nature that goes far beyond classrooms, and that's been really, really difficult for a lot of people to see happening during a time of COVID when we're not even allowed into the schools, but we actually have staff like Shirlene, Yads, and Vitavia, who are our food corps members, who are just like totally envisioning what, like, how exciting and engaging a Zoom workshop is going to be for an 8-year-old, and like, I believe them, and I hope that you'll join us and check back in and ask us how our progress on that is, because I'm very excited to share more. And we're at GVI, we're going to be impacting policy, not only in our city, but at a state level with help, like partners in Senator Marilyn Moore and the Working Lands Alliance's Chelsea Gazillo, to make land more accessible, to make startup business possible, and to get more hands in the soil so that food businesses aren't an idea and a dream and something that folks have to hustle and struggle for, but is something that is a very easy ladder to climb. And the only hustle you have to incorporate is how creative and big your dream is going to be. And none of this is going to be possible without a staff that's positioned to stay. Honestly, like we can talk all day about how exciting it is for me to be executive director, but I am truly nothing without the people beside me in this work. And that's not only the kids in the school garden and our community gardeners, but especially our youth and our staff. They're the key. And I want GVI to be a nonprofit that cares more about quality of life for the folks who are working with us and their learning and their engagement than we do about, you know, necessarily just like expanding for expansion's sake. I think it's really, we live in a world that values and is really jazzed to talk about exponential growth. But for those of us on this call who understand nature, we know there's like actually no such thing as exponential growth. Like, things peter out and topple over time. That's what nature does. And so why not just build really deep roots with the staff we have and make sure that what we do is grow carefully and committed in a way so that when we look out at the food landscape of the future with this fabulous food hub in Bridgeport, that we're also seeing folks who've come from GVI and incubating leadership, not only in Bridgeport, but all over the state, all over the region, all over the country. Because our staff is really diverse. It's made up of incredible folks of color and Black people, and that's the leadership that I want to be working for in 10 years when I'm passing the torch, or less than 10 years. I'm not committing to 10 years in any way, shape, or form. But let me just now finish up by saying that I'm really grateful for each of you and your time and the space you're giving to my dreams today. Because again, like, I'm nothing without each and every one of you, and I'm so grateful for your investment of time today, but also the investments that you've made in me in the past 5 years so that I could reach for this. And so with that, I'd love to, we're gonna turn it over in just maybe 5 minutes. I'm sorry that we're running over a little bit, Andrea, but maybe we could have 5 minutes for a Q&A so that folks could ask me some burning questions if you have any about anything that I've said or anything you've seen on our Instagram and Facebook about dreamy things that are happening at GVI currently.
Can I ask, or are you looking for someone to type it in?
Oh no, you may absolutely ask. It's open for everybody.
So if you had 3 things that you wanted to accomplish in the next 4 years, what would they be?
I would like to make sure that the urban farmer, or I'm sorry, the urban agriculture master plan that GVI created with the city of Bridgeport is actually being used by the city of Bridgeport. The things that you spoke about around zoning inequity, how hard it is for people to grow their own food, and how some of the land that we're currently growing on in Bridgeport on GVI spaces is actually not that well protected. Those things can be ameliorated if the urban agriculture master plan that we crafted for years and years with the Food Policy Council is actually activated and used, and the city sees it as a guiding principle rather than a plan on a shelf. And that's going to take not just GVI doing that, but our entire community. That's like a first goal that's really important to me, because that'll make sure we can keep doing the work that we do, but also make it so that people who are not part of the GVI community are also protected in growing food in the ways that they want to grow it, whether that's honey or livestock or poultry or vegetables. So we need to think broadly and think outside of GVI. So I'm trying to think about all food producers and all foodways. The second is that I would be, and I think we're getting there, board members can chime in, but in 4 years, I'd really like to see a graduate of our youth program on the GVI board. Our board has over time become more diverse. We have more board members that live in Bridgeport now than we have before, but we are not incorporating the weather vanes that I'm so proud to always talk about, who are the beating heart of GVI, which are our youth. And I think for that, it's not that we have to have youth that are necessarily more willing to join or who can hold their own in that space. No, it's that the space needs to change to accommodate a youth voice, and especially a youth voice of color, so that they are seen as a space of leadership and like seen as their full self and whole truth. And if we're going to do that, we actually have to unbuild the culture of a board that exists in all of us, but even in the GVI board, which is one of individualization, getting business done, and maybe not always understanding the experiences of the people around you. And I think, like, as I said, we could all personally do that work, but at the board level, we have to work really hard and intentionally to do that so that youth can come into that space, because the GVI board is my boss, and I want to be led by our youth. So the Urban Agriculture Master Plan, our youth, and then I guess the third goal that would be really something that I'm dreaming to have time to do and partnerships to build is that I would really, really like GVI to not be the only voice of urban agriculture at a state level. Not that we always are. There are so many urban agriculture nonprofits around the state, but sometimes Cristina or myself are called to lead conversations or asked for input. And I want there to be a stronger connection between urban agriculture programs like GVI across the state, so we can leverage our power and leverage dollars and leverage voices, because that's what's similar to my example about youth being able to come into a system that is cracked open and is now welcoming, and one that they can flourish within and can be nourished by. We need to do that at the state level as urban agriculture nonprofits that care about food justice and anti-racism. We need to do that with our policy and our work, so that the youth who work within our programs can come into those spaces and be politicians and leaders that design what the future of our state looks like agriculturally. And it's going to change. It's changing all the time, but like, we know this, climate change, the issues that we have with folks being able to not only access but retain land, how hard it is for farmers to find loans. But if we have the youth who actually work in these urban urban ag programs shaping legislation, we're gonna crack this nut. It's gonna all change tomorrow. So I think it's gonna take dedicated work and not necessarily work that us nonprofits are always paid to do, but hey, that's part of it. I hope that answered your question.
That's great. And I want to let you know, any way I can help along the way, I'm here for you to do whatever part I can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
If you've got time for one more question, there's one in the chat box from Lauren, who says, do you see GVI's role in Bridgeport's farmers markets changing at all under your leadership?
Ooh, good question, Lauren. Well, I know that I won't be at as many of the BFMC meetings, probably. I'll get replaced by our amazing farm manager, Farmer Cat. But I think that already, like, GVI's role in the Bridgeport Farmers Markets has been to work together with folks that are already on our collaborative to really identify something's not right in the water. Like, why are a bunch of our farmers markets are supported by the same farm? Why do we have to call out to so many far-flung regions to be able to get food into our cities? There's something not right here, and I think that something not right is your intuition and conscience saying, like, you need to look at the systemic barriers, and we're already unbuilding that through work with CT Core, that's communities organizing for racial equity, and having them do anti-racist trainings with us and having us really question what an inclusive farmers market looks like means that we have to question what our leadership looks like. To Marilyn Moore's point, the Farmers Market Collaborative is essentially all women, and a lot of us are, not all of us, but a good number of us are paid to do the work, and a good number of us are white. And so how do we make these spaces into spaces that are not only more inclusive at the farmers market, but inclusive at the collaborative meetings, and so that farmers from across the state, but especially in our city, feel like they can come and make decisions about how our farmers markets are going to change, move, and grow. And so I can't say that I know exactly how our markets are going to change on the ground, but I know that I want our leadership to change. And that's sort of, that again comes back to that theme of unlearning and unbuilding, which I know I'm harping on, but that's because it's been the tenet of the work that I've done at GVI in 5 years, and something that I'm not perfect at and committed to keep doing. And I'm committed to keep telling you that I'm not perfect at it, so you feel like you can do it too. I hope that answers your question in one way or another. With that, oh, sorry.
I was going to ask folks if there are any other questions before we move on to our next bit.
Yes, I know I'm now running a little over, and I want Andrea and the folks at the Social Impact, or at the Center for Social Impact, to have a chance to present the Outstanding Community Partner Award. So with that, I think I might wrap up the Q&A, but if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll type some answers. So we're passing it your way.
Awesome, thank you. I don't think this will take too long, so I think that we will be back on track with time after this. So thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this, as Melissa said earlier, and to kind of co-host this with you. It's really exciting to be a part of to celebrate the work that has been done, and to really kind of look forward to the work that will continue to be done under Ellie's leadership. So we're really excited. So you heard before about the work of the Center for Social Impact at Fairfield University, and we are honored to present our 2020 Outstanding Community Partner Award to GVI. So each year, our center recognizes the work of a particular organization who has demonstrated a commitment to deep and transformational partnership work with our university. So our local and global partners, we believe, are critical to the education of our students to be socially responsible citizens and social change agents. And the Green Village Initiative has been a significant partner to us in that work. So as you heard before, the collaboration between the university and GVI began in 2016 about partnering with Dr. Dina Franceschi's course to conduct a preliminary evaluation of GVI's impact in our local community. And that collaboration blossomed into larger research projects with our newly established Community Engaged Research Initiative. So an interdisciplinary team of faculty and student researchers built on that preliminary analysis and dove deeper into the direct and indirect impacts of community gardens, examining the variety and amount of produce grown and the impacts of the gardens on home values and incidence of crime. So what you heard before from Melissa. And the team also began to gather the stories of community gardeners themselves. In spring of 2020, students from Joel Beatty's multimedia writing course took excerpts from the interviews and collected recipes from the community gardeners and turned it into a virtual cookbook, which we'll hear about after this. This project was recognized and featured in the university's Innovative Research Symposium, which took place in April of 2020. In a special way, in the presentation of this award, we do want to recognize the work of Cristina Sandolo over the past several years. not only for shepherding this particular organization and being so welcome of Fairfield University and its students, but for being a true thought partner with our center as we think strategically about the role our university can play in the broader community of which it is a part. We are so grateful for her leadership and her presence and her constant support of our particular mission at the Center for Social Impact at Fairfield. So we look forward to many, many more opportunities under Ellie's leadership to bring the resources of the university and the resources of GVI together to co-create something new that will advance both of our missions. So thank you for letting us be a part of this celebration. Again, congratulations on your outstanding work, and thank you for your continued partnership. So if we were together somewhere, I'd have like a certificate and like a little something else to hand to you, and we'd give each other a hug, and then we'd probably take a couple pictures. But you know, we'll do that at some point in the future in a better world for all of us, I hope. So thank you all. And the award does have a small contribution to the organization's work as well, which is just a small token again of your partnership over the years.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's hard to put into words like how impactful like our partnership has been. No one component like can outshine any other, because every human who's like pushing to bring this partnership to fruition like brings such a different energy. And each and every one of the students who's come and, oh my gosh, like had to work like 4 hours in the blazing sun at a community garden to like rip out weeds with me as a part of their like fun, like outdoor educational, welcome aboard, like orientation. Like each one of them has always like brought a new energy and experience, and it's been a pleasure, like truly a pleasure to work with you and to just learn from each of you in the work that you do. Cristina, do you have anything you want to add?
Just thank you so much. We are honored as an organization to receive the award. Thank you for your kind words, Andrea. It's been, I mean, yeah, I just echo what Ellie says. This is just one of like the deepest partnerships I feel like that we have. And I think it's a model for other communities and other organizations and hopefully other universities and centers like you guys. I think we're both like committed to being the best that we can for the community. And I really feel like we've challenged each other and just learned from each other since day one, since Dina took her first class out to, I think it was Ridge Ave Garden, right? Or was it one of the architects? And we were kind of trying to figure out like, what can we study and what kind of impacts can we find? And just from that moment, it was like, let's commit to this, commit to the long term, challenge each other and figure out how we can do this. And it's just been amazing for myself to work with all of you individually, Jonathan and Julia being out in the field, and Andrea always sending us volunteers and keeping us accountable to and helping us figure out how to be better at volunteer management, and Melissa just leading up like the strategy. And I wish Scott was here as well so we can thank him, but please send along our gratitude. And yeah, I'm so excited to hear from Joel now, who took kind of some of the storytelling and was able to create this amazing product. So just thanks everybody. Yeah, good stuff. We'll pass it on to Joel.
Hey, thanks a lot. Can you hear me okay, everyone? Okay. Yeah, meeting Cristina and Ellie has been probably the highlight, and the whole GVI crew has been the highlight of my year, in a year of a lot of hardships around the world. So this has been the highlight for sure. So I'm gonna share my screen and I'll kind of walk you through the cookbook, and then I'll narrate along the way. First of all, let me get my screen up. Oh, stop share. Gotta share my sound as well. Sorry about this. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I'm Dr. Joel Beatty, and I am a visiting professor of professional writing in the English department. And so last year I taught a multimedia writing class, and I was also introduced to the GVI crew and the organization, and discussed a project with Jonathan Delgado and Scott Lacey. And together we kind of came up with this idea of a cookbook. And I kind of took it from there and ran with it. And we started collecting recipes and doing interviews with GVI members, all on a volunteer basis. We just collected names and numbers. And as we progressed through the interview process, these themes, many of which you've all touched on today, have kind of emerged in that process. And so especially this idea of food justice and how it's associated with access. And so on top of that, what I got from Senator Moore's talk was how that is tied to quality. And I think that's what the heart of this cookbook really speaks to, is how to get quality food and to transfer that knowledge of the urban farmer into the community, and how do you do that in a quality way. So the first thing is there's a larger book taking place here with all of the transcribed interviews. It'll be a long PDF document with an introduction and a typical digital book. But what I'm going to show you today is the ebook, which is a multimedia ebook. And so this will be, this part of the book or the project is designed to use. And so I envisioned it to use in the kitchen, on an iPad or a phone, and have mobile access to it. And then also embed audio into the book, so you can actually hear from the farmers themselves. So yeah, here's this. Came about through quite a process. I had students from my multimedia class working on this in the spring. And then I also had an assistant over the summer, and she's a professional writing student, Arushi Vijay. And she helped me quite a bit with this as well. And I would say the project is about 85 to 90% done. What remains on the project is the publishing process, and then in the digital PDF version of the book, we have to add a few components to that. But this part is complete, and I will share the link with Ellie so you can all follow along or go back to it later. So the full book, it will be called Everything Down to the Root: Exchanges in Food, Culture, and Knowledge in a Community of Urban Farmers. And that name, Everything Down to the Root, really emerged from one of the interviews, and I'll go into that a little bit later. And so I put down the websites and the introduction page. And so really I wanted to incorporate these three main themes into the book that sort of tie everything together. So this idea of farming and community and knowledge. And so I think all of those ideas kind of fit under those themes. And so I asked, I didn't want to just collect recipes and ask how do you cook the food. I wanted to get a bigger sense of the people of GVI. And so I came up with a list of questions. And as Ellie and Cristina know, some of them are kind of from left field and not really related to their work at GVI, but more about life and knowledge in general. So things like, what is important to you? Where did you learn to cook? Do you have a typical meal? Have you ever ruined dinner? And then what are some difficulties in preparing food? And then I really wanted this idea of sharing knowledge. So do you have any advice for new growers? And do you have any recipes that you'd like to share with the community, and why? And so these questions, really, I was overwhelmed with the responses. And I I asked everybody these questions. So, and that's where the interview started. Okay. Oh. All right, so here is, because it's an interactive book, there's a little tutorial on how to use the book, play, pause, resume audio, turning pages, and zooming in and out. You can use it on an iPad, a phone, or on a computer. And then here's an interactive table of contents. So if you want to look through the farmer profiles, you can go right to them, or you can go through the garden recipes and all the recipes that they shared if one interests you. All right, so this is Mei Yang and her daughter Katie, and this is where the title of the book sort of emerged. And so I really wanted to take a clip of everyone's voice before we share the recipes. So here's the first profile.
You look forward to that. You look forward to it, the greens of the cilantro, and then you look forward to the seedlings.
Yeah.
You look forward to the leaf.
Every bit of it.
And then you look forward to the stem of it, and then you also look forward to the seed when it ripens, because then you coriander. You know how you smash it down and you put it in the soup. Yeah. So all that, everything comes to use. Nothing goes to waste. People say, "Oh, it's old. I'm gonna just toss and throw it away," but really, you use everything down to the root.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so in the audio, we didn't plan on making this an audiobook at first, so we recorded the interviews. We were going to transcribe them later, but we ended up putting the audio in, and the interviewers are myself and Scott Lacey, and then we recorded these in coffee shops around Bridgeport in February and March. And here's what a recipe page will look like. And here's the beauty of this book is that most cookbooks have a predetermined format for how to present the recipe, and we didn't get recipes like that. And so instead of transcribing them into one recipe format, I would rather have the interviewer or the interviewee explain how they're made. And so hear directly from the farmer and why. And I think this just works a lot better for hearing the voice of this community farmer.
Call it, I guess, a poor man's soup because I just feel like it's something healthy. It's very easy.
Yeah.
People can just, and they're not throwing away and wasting something that's edible. That you can consume not just the fruit, it's not just the veggie on itself, but the plant itself. If you end up getting a blossom and it turns into a squash, you can eat the baby squash, or you can let it ripen until it gets old. Hard, and then you can make a different soup out of it or a dessert out of it. It just depends on how you want it to grow and prepare it.
Yeah, so May in her interview really went into depth on how to harvest these zucchini or squash vines. And she talks about in the entire interview, when the book is done, you'll be able to read the whole thing. She talks about how you can harvest these squash vines over and over and over again. And it's a really sustainable practice, and she can make soup anytime she wants. She doesn't have to wait for the zucchinis to get really big. And it was just a light bulb in my head, like, oh, there's so much I don't know about farming and gardening. And I've been gardening for, almost a decade now myself. So it's just incredible amount of knowledge that everybody brought to the table. And it really touched to the core of this project. And what GVI adds, it brings all of the diverse members of the community together, and is putting this knowledge out there for the world and educating. Okay, so some of the interviews went into way more depth than just on food. And so, I Messiah was a great interview, great to interview, and he had a lot of philosophical ideas. And so this also became a theme of the book, is to touch on other people's philosophy of food and living.
My thing is, learn as much as you can learn, but enter with an open mind, because we have to learn how to agree and disagree in order to find the wrongs and the right in the things that really is developed around us. Life within itself exists only because of nature. And as long as we learn how to be in balance with nature, we can make things work.
Okay, and so as you can see, the recipes are actually, all of them are fairly simple. There's not a lot of complicated recipes or steps. It's mostly just organic, wholesome food that you can grow yourself and cook yourself. And that's the beauty of this cookbook. And I think people will have a good experience when they go through this book and use this book. Just because of that, it's a very simple book to cook from, I think. Yeah, so kind of go through. So here's another one, Diane. I thought it was a really wonderful to interview.
As far as growing the food, you just have to maintain your garden. They have to come out and care for it like daily. A lot of people don't have time to come out daily, but I'm just thinking my veggies grow better when I'm out there every day spraying for the bugs or the white flies, shooing the white flies away.
Yeah, and this one had a personal effect on me. Every day I was out in the hot garden, this quote would run through my head. You have to maintain, or you have to care for your garden daily. And so that would force me to go out and pull weeds and move vines around. And I had an incredible garden this year. It was really an inspiration that way. And then also we have a few bilingual interviews. So Maria Ramos, Pablo from our team was very helpful in translating for us. And so we have one bilingual interview that's really great.
So, lo que me motiva a yo aprender cosas nuevas es que a medida que yo me empodere aprendiendo cualquier tema o cualquier concepto que pueda ayudar a mi familia, eso se lo transmito a mis hijos y eso va a ser una buena conducta, una buena práctica para ellos o para mis nietos. Los cambios que yo decida hacer en mí se van a ver reflejados en mis hijos y luego en mis próximas generaciones. Por eso es que siempre trato de empoderarme y leer y aprender.
Está muy bueno eso. So she says to empower herself by learning like different topics. Because then she can transmit whatever she learns to her kids, and also her kids can transmit to her grandchildren. So it will be like a whole line of like she's empowering herself to learn, but like by her learning, her next generations will also learn.
Okay, so I will share the link with Ellie once again, and she can distribute that link to everybody. And my hope is that the book will be published in the open access library through Fairfield's library, and it'll be open access. Anyone can access it and download the full book. And then I will have like a barcode or a URL address attached to that to this document. But before that process is finished, I will share this link with Ellie. Ultimately, publishing takes a lot of work. So at some point, I have to transfer everything from the book to a permanent archive. And so I'm still working through some of that process, but it will get there very soon. Hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have the book or that process will begin as soon as we're done editing. But this part is ready to use. You can share the link and use it anytime. And I will definitely circulate updates. Yeah, just wanted to share Ellie and Christina's advice.
We are providing spaces for people not only to grow their own food, but to get together, build a community, share stories, share produce, share food, and share knowledge. So that's and share opportunity, right? That's really at the heart of what we do. And when it comes to cooking food, keep it simple, try it out, try new things. You can't mess up veggies too much. and if you're excited about it, that's kind of enough. It doesn't have to be a top chef thing, right? It just has to be kind of exciting and delicious for you and whoever you're sharing your meal with.
Thank God we have that boiled eggplant, because we're going to miss that so much when Cristina leaves. It is a GVI classic potluck item.
And then, of course, here's this idea of being connected to the soil and getting your hands dirty.
Farming and gardening is really similar to meditation or prayer or whatever spiritual practice you have. You hear people say it's therapeutic, and that's because you have to be so patient.
All right, so yeah.
And so what recipe would you like to share, and why would you like to share?
I'm sharing my family's Hungarian rosemary potato bread recipe. So my Hungarian potato bread is, I love making it. It's a couple cups of potatoes, which we grow on Reservoir Community Farm, and you can mix it with really any kind of flour. And so I don't think people should get like worked up about what type of flour they're gonna make with it or use with it. And I mix it almost every time with a big handful and helping of dried rosemary from the Reservoir Community Farm greenhouse.
Oh wow!
So it's like every bite has like a lot of scent in it.
All right, so yeah, I guess I don't have time to go through the whole thing, but yeah, you'll be getting updates very shortly and hopefully published in the next couple months.
Thank you so much, Joel. It like, this has been like, I said from the top that this was going to be the most exciting part, and it truly is. It feels awesome to feel like Messiah is like in the room with us. And I'm really grateful that you didn't cut out the audio parts, because that's what makes my heart is in my throat listening. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, the whole process, and yeah, I can't wait to share it with everybody. It really is going to be a great thing. So
awesome. And thank you, everyone. I know we're over by a few minutes. I'm really grateful for the extra time that you dedicated today, and thank you so much for joining us, for asking questions, and for being present, laughing at my puns, and for being inspired with us today, because this is really what it takes. It takes a village. So feel free to get off of mute and say goodbye if you feel comfortable doing that. And if not, if you have any questions or follow-up comments, absolutely email us at info@gogbi.org, and we will be posting this if you want to see yourself or see any part of the presentation again, or show it to someone else, show the cookbook to someone else. We're going to be posting this online as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
so much.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye.